Hi, and welcome to our unit on data and Excel. So, what on earth is this about? Um, so, what is data exactly? What is it? I don't know. Have you ever really thought about it? It's just a collection of facts. Anything that we collect and store really could be thought of as data. Numbers, words, measurements, observations, descriptions of things, names, addresses, birthdates, the gender, the date you started school, all of these things that we keep and we know about people, whether or not you've attended class today or not. That's data. The daily temperature, the amount of rainfall, that's data. All of these sorts of things. On computers, the images, the videos, the information about those images and videos, where they were taken, what kind of device they were taken on, that can all be seen as data. And most of the time, it can be used and searched and analysed. And when we analyse it, it goes from being in this raw form, which is potentially quite overwhelming, and especially when there's a lot of it, where it doesn't really have any meaning, to suddenly be meaningful, readable data that we then call information. And information is used to help us learn, to help us make decisions about things, because we now can compare and contrast and just understand what it is that we're looking at. So I'm going to have a look at a few differences between data and information. We're going to start with this one. What is $1 trillion? We're going to start with this one. What is $1 trillion exactly? So we know that $1 trillion is one with 12 zeros after it. But what does that actually mean? Like, in terms of how much money that is, what does that mean? I mean, it's a darn sight more money than I'm ever going to see in my lifetime. But when people say to us that something will cost $1 trillion or $1 billion, can we really understand what that means? Is it as much as we think? Yeah, so let's have a little look at this. This is a list, really. It's a table of data. It tells us the amount, how many trillions, who's got it, some information, a little bit of an extra explanation. They've categorized it, given it a year and where they got the information from. And it's pretty good. It's not too bad. It's in some sort of numerical order until it gets to a point where suddenly it's not anymore. It suddenly changes. But you know, it isn't really adding to my understanding hugely. Flick over to this. Now, this is from a website that is called Information is Beautiful, and he makes absolutely beautiful visualizations of data to make it informative, to help explain things. So this is showing us what $1 trillion is, and straight away we can see that in size it doesn't seem very much, because we're using the size of these things and the font size to give us an understanding of how much Apple is worth compared to how much the financial crisis of 2007-2008 cost us. The GDP of China, the amount of government debt in the United States and in Europe, how much it would cost $16.5 trillion for the world to meet Paris climate change targets by 2030. Okay, so it would cost less than the US government debt. the entire world to do that. Now, if I start scrolling down, we also start to get colour. The world GDP, 75.6. And 127 trillion is the wealth of the top 1% of citizens in the world. $127 trillion. Yet 16.5 trillion would allow us to meet our Paris climate change targets by 2030. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? So the size of that compared to that $1 trillion before. It's a pretty great way, isn't it, of showing the amount, giving us an understanding of these numbers. Yeah? Let's have another look at this one. Here's a list, a table again, of the amount of energy produced by each of these energy generation places around the world. So there's a list of the place, or the facility, there, where it's located, what type it is, and how much it's creating in megawatt hours, and how many barrels of oil that's equivalent to. Again, pretty good. We've got, sort of some idea of the largest and numbered. Just it's not a huge data set, but it is fairly sizable. But it's much more powerful when we look at this. So we could see broken down solar, biomass, geothermal electricity, wind. We've got these bar charts that are giving us size. We've broken them down into different types by colour. You can still see that we're getting a lot here from coal. Look at this when we go down to nuclear energy and to hydro. Check out these guys now. We'd be interested to see what their, the geography of where they're located as to why hydro is so effective there. But this is much more interesting and powerful. But at the same time, they've also snuck this in here. How much usage it's costing to run Google and how much it's costing to mine for Bitcoin. Yeah. So just some interesting facts there. That's really pretty cool. So another one that I've got here is a list of the diversity in the US tech giants. So looking at the gender breakdown and the cultural breakdown of the different people in each of these companies. So there's the percentage of the US population up here, and then there's the percentage of each of these workforces that meets these gender or cultural backgrounds. So when we look at it in the table, it gives us some numbers, it's pretty cool. But if we look here, then I've got this flicked on to show also the year-on-year change, so the difference between 2016 and 2017. We can see a great use of colour and the size of the bar again through each of these, so we can see as well that the different colour is the change on each year. So that's a much more powerful statement about the breakdown of different types of people that are working in these organisations. Why does it matter? Well, a lot of these organisations are investing in artificial intelligence algorithms, which if we don't take lots of different perspectives into account, we could make some pretty big decisions. But that's a topic for another day. All right, so now that we've had a little bit of a look about the difference between data and information, we've turned data into information by using graphs, charts, colour, size, infographics, just sometimes statistical analysis tools such as the maximum value, the minimum value, the various different averages, mean, mode, and median. So these are, great little things to think about when you're wanting to make sure that you're really giving meaning to the data that you're working with. So the tool that we're going to use to do that is Excel, and it's a really powerful application that's part of the Microsoft Office suite. So Word, PowerPoint, same sort of thing. I have this strange feeling that maybe this has stopped doing what I want, but let's pause for a second and find out. Excellent. Good. Okay. Okay, so Excel is just like a maths book. Yeah, it's got lots of pages inside, and they're called workbook. Well, the whole thing is called a workbook, and inside it's got different pages called worksheets. Yeah. Excel is made up of all of these different squares on a page. Why? Well, each of these is called a cell, and why does it look like this? Let's look at something. In the old days, we would have a book called a ledger book, and accountants would write down all of the income that was coming into a business, all the money that was being paid into a business, and all of the expenses, so all of the things that they had to pay for, and try and balance it out to make sure that they knew that they were having, had enough money to pay all their staff and that kind of thing. And it looked like this. So it's got some, columns and rows. And so basically, an Excel workbook is designed to mimic this. It's an electronic version. So it's made up of a table, and each square inside here is called a cell. If I click on a cell, it gets a border around it and becomes what we call the active cell. Okay, because if I type in that, if I type now, that's where my information is going to appear. So we've got rows which go across from left to right, and they are identified by numbers. And then we've got columns which go up and down. So think about the columns that hold up a building, and they have letters which identify them. Each cell can be identified by a combination of its column and row. So, for instance, this cell here is called A10, and that is what we call a cell reference. And this here would be D10. Up here would be E2, and here would be B2. So in order to figure out how to get around an Excel spreadsheet, we're going to create a game of Battleships. I don't know if you've ever played Battleships before, but basically you have your ships in a spot, and then somebody calls out a reference to a spot on a grid, and if you've got a ship there, then you say hit, and if you hit all of the things on that ship, then you've sunk that ship and you get points.
Okay, so you can see my Excel Battleships set up here. I have two worksheets. One is called My Ships and the other is called Opponent's Ships. And on the My Ships, I have a 10 by 10 grid, and I have put in place the various ships according to the score, which is on the other worksheet. I've got some instructions here. And then on the other side here, I've got another grid, the same, but this time I haven't highlighted any of the ship locations. And then over here, we've got the the battleships, each type of battleship, how many cells each battleship takes up, and the number of points that you get for sinking that battleship. Then, I'll just take those out. I've got some calculated fields here on the end for the number of points. And also, this the total number of ships sunk. So if I put a 1 in here, so if I sink my opponent's aircraft carrier, I can then press 1 here and it will update the total number of points that I have to 200. If I then also sink their destroyer, I got 200 points for the aircraft carrier and 100 points for the destroyer. It's calculated that I've got 300 points and I've sunk 2 ships in total. So how you would play, you put your ships out by shading them a different colour, and then whilst you flick over to your opponent's ship's side, I call out A1, and then if my opponent has a ship in A1, I press H and enter. You can see that it has modified the formatting when I put that H in to say that that was a hit. If I then called out A2, I'd put, and they said no ship, I say M for miss, and that has coloured that in yellow. So on my own thing, as my opponent calls out their location, if they say A1 and that was a hit, I press enter. I put an H in there to show that my ship has been hit in that location. If I get to all of those being hit, then I would say you've sunk my battleship, and my opponent would then score themselves 1 point for the destroyer. So we will go through how to make this board step by step.
So we're going to head on over to Excel. What you need to do is create a new blank workbook. And the first thing that you should do is save that workbook. So File, Save As, and I'm going to save it straight into OneDrive. It is. I'll call it Battleship. Okay, so I'm going to click into cell A1 and drag all the way over to J10. So I'm selecting a grid that is 10 squares by 10 squares. And I'm going to create a border. I'm going to colour it in the colour of the ocean, blue. I'm now going to go to the format here, and I'm going to make it column width. It's going to be 5, and the row height is going to be 20. That looks pretty nice. I'm now going to type in my ships, and I'm going to select from A11 to J11 and click Merge and Center. I'm actually going to make it bold and 16 so that it looks a bit nice. I'm going to come down here to the worksheet name, double click, and say 9 ships. Press enter. Now I'm going to add another worksheet by clicking on the plus sign. I'm going to now double click on that, and I'm going to rename that to Opponent's Ships. Okay, I'm going to head on over back to here, grab the whole thing again, and copy and paste that into my opponent's ships. Now, while I've still got it selected, go back to the format and redo those row height and column width again. Row height 20, column width 5, and this needs to be called opponent's ships because it's not mine. Now, I'm going to create my scoreboard. You can do it on my ships or opponent's ships. I'm going to do it on the opponent's. And I'm going to So type ship name. Now I press the tab key on my keyboard, move to the next cell, and I'm going to type size in cells and tab to the next one. Now you see when I started typing that, some of the text has disappeared. Don't stress, we're going to fix that in just a second. Points, tab to the next one, the number sunk, tab and total. Okay. Now down here I'm going to type in the name of the ships, aircraft carrier, battleship, destroyer, submarine and cruiser. Don't really mind if you want to make them different types of spaceships or something. And now to fix up this text disappearing, when I hover over the column here, right up the top where the letters are for the column names, when I hover between the dividers, you can see there's a bar and two arrows appears. My cursor changes from a downward arrow to a bar with the two arrows. I'm going to double click and that automatically resizes. I could also click and drag to make it a size that I want, but a double click automatically makes it the size that it needs to be. So that's a really handy one. Okay, so let's now fill in size. They're going to be 5, 4, 3, 3, and 2. To move down cells very easily, you can use the Enter key. The number of points, 200, 150, 100, 150. Okay, the most powerful part of Excel is the ability to do calculations. So being able to put in information and it to automatically update the result of sums. Yeah, it means that you can do calculations with huge amounts of data really, really simply, and you can do more complex ones. This PowerPoint, you can actually double click and you can play around with this. But I'm going to go to the real one. So let's have an example here. I'm going to pretend that I'm a bookshop and I've got this little list of my books. This top field here has got books. This has got the number of books sold and the price. And then here I'm multiplying the price by the number of books sold using a formula. Over here I've done the calculation manually. So I've sold 20 Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone books here, and that's $500 because it's 20 times 25. Now, if I today have sold another 10 copies of that book, I'm going to make that now 30. When I press enter, that has updated to 750. I didn't have to type anything in, it just automatically did it. Chamber of Secrets, say I've sold 5 of those, so it's currently at $315. I'm going to make that now 20. It's now 420. Not only has it updated this, but it's also updated my total here, which is the total amount sold. I just realised that that is not really a very useful figure. This, however, would be. So we can have a look here and do the same thing. Let's update this to 30. It has not changed from 500. This is 11. It's still on 231, so I'm going to make that 15. It has not changed, and neither has that. So you can see how the formulae are really, really powerful. How do you use them? Let's give that a shot. So in Excel, calculations are written backwards. That means the equals sign has to come first. If you put 2 plus 2 equals, the text 2 plus 2 equals will show. If you put the equals sign first, then it's telling Excel that you want it to do the maths for you. So equals sign first. When you actually put your formula in, after you've written it, it should show you the result. So if you want to actually see what the formula is, you can come and have a look up here in the formula bar, and it will actually show you whether it's a formula or whether it's just the number. Yeah. So we can use in our formula numbers combined with cell references. So that's your A2, A4, B10, etc., combined with our mathematical operators. Some of them are super simple. So addition is a plus, subtraction is a dash or a minus. Multiplication, however, is an asterisk. You can find that by pressing Shift and 8, or if you've got a desktop keyboard, then it's on your numerical keyboard, which is the very right-hand side. You've got an asterisk there above the number 9. And the division is a slash, so on your numeric keyboard, that's above your number 8, but on your other keyboard, it is next to the Shift key on the right-hand side of your keyboard. So here's the deal. This is Eddie, the Excel-elephant. He's a baby elephant, and he's formula fed. If you type in the answers to sums instead of using formulas to calculate them, then you're depriving Eddie of his food and his sustenance, and he will die. So don't be responsible for starving Eddie. Make sure you feed him formula wherever formula is required. Okay, Battleship Game board. So in my totals column, I'm going to type in the equals sign first to tell Excel I'm doing some maths. I'm now going to click on the number of points, which is N2, and I'm going to press my asterisk and now click on the number sunk, because the total points will be a product of the number of points multiplied by the number sunk. So notice how when I've done that, this one's come up in blue, and that's blue text. This one's come up in red and with red text. So it tells you which fields you've selected. Now press enter, and that, oh, it says 0. Well, that's because I haven't got anything in my number sunk. If I now put 1 in there and press enter, it's automatically updated that to 200. Now, if I select that field again, I click on that, make that my active cell. Well, that's the active cell. Can you see it's got a nice green border, and at the bottom on the right-hand side, there's a little green square. Notice my cursor here is kind of this sort of 3D white cross. But if I hover over that green square, it becomes a black thin cross. When it's that black thin cross, if I click and drag and release, it actually copies the formula down for me. Not only does it copy, it also modifies it. So if I have a look here, it was N2 multiplied by O2. And if I'm going to zoom that in so that you can see it. So it was N2 multiplied by O2, and now I go to the one below it. It's N3 multiplied by O3. So it knew to move down and multiply. It knew that I didn't want in this column to know what the aircraft carrier points by number sunk are. I want to know what the battleship points by number sunk are. Similarly, when I've moved down here, it's number 4. So that's a relative cell reference because it's copied it relative to the very first one that we've done. Okay, so we're going to now add in a grand total. So to do that, I'm going to go into our O7. I'm going to type my equals. I'm going to type the word sum and open up a bracket. Now I'm going to select O2 and drag all the way down to O6. Notice how that has got said O2 and then a colon O6. And what that means is that I've selected everything from 02 to 06. So I'm now going to press my closing bracket and press enter. Now, I could have said equals 02 plus 03 plus 04 plus 05 plus 06, but that starts to get quite tedious. Instead, it's a lot easier, isn't it, to just say from 02 to 06 and everything in between, and that's what the colon there says. So that is, if you press your shift key, it's 2 keys away from the right, from the enter key on the right of your keyboard. Okay. Now, that's called a cell range when we select all of them with those columns. I'm going to do the same thing and copy that across so that it can calculate the total. Now just test that out. If I add these in, are these totals updating? Yes, they are. Alright, I'm going to get rid of them for when you play our game. Alright, I'm going to grab the entire scoreboard and I'm going to go up to here, format as table. I'm going to choose a nice pretty table layout and click OK. And that's just giving me, looks a bit nicer, a bit neater. The final thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that when I type in my hits and misses, hit and miss, that it actually makes it a bit more obvious and stands out for me what they are, what a hit and a miss are. So if I select everything from A1 through to J11 and I go to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules and equal to, I'm now going to put in an H here and I'll leave that as a light red fill with dark red text. So if the cell has a value of H, then it will have this formatting. I'm going to do the same thing again, highlight cell rules equal to, and now put an M, so for a miss. And in that instance, I want to drop down here and choose yellow fill. So if my cell has a value of M for miss, I want to make this yellow with yellow text. So let's try that out. If I have a hit, it's red, beautiful. A miss, it's yellow, fantastic. So that is Excel, and a very brief introduction to how we're going to use it. And good luck and have fun playing a game of Battleships on your Battleship game that you have just created.